Greetings, traveler. I am Sonox, the teller of tales. Would you like to hear one? Well, I have a few for you today, but before we get started, please consider subscribing to the channel, liking this video, and leaving a comment below. All of those things help in the YouTube algorithm, and we are a small fledgling channel still trying to grow, so it helps immensely, and it is greatly appreciated. Our first tale is titled, I joined a game of randos and the DM started streaming on Twitch without warning. Good morning, everyone. I saw the post about being secretly recorded by a player and posted to TikTok, and that just reminded me of my one horror story that's got some drama. See the title for some of it and below for the rest. I am a forever DM, and I see everywhere that sometimes you need to be a player to get out of a writing slump. So I joined a random game I found on a Discord server. We were playing a dungeon crawler module and had a session every other week. This game didn't start out great and didn't really get better over the course of 4 months. There were issues getting people to show up, getting the VTT to work, getting people to stop fighting with the DM, etc. I told myself I would stay for 5 sessions and I did, and then I left. There were approximately 7 players at a time in a session, and people would leave and we'd get more people because the game wasn't to their liking. Which, fair. I complained about it to my own players. But add in the pets everyone had and combat took forever. Not to mention that the difficulty was dialed up to 13 to 17 instead of 11. I did not make my character to be an optimized combat person, so I went down every fight and I usually wasn't the only one. And this game was almost 100% combat too. I spent a lot of time not speaking. At one point, the DM was introducing homebrew rules and they weren't written down anywhere. Sometimes to our favor and others were just weird. But we didn't know them until we came across a situation where we interacted with said rules. One player got super heated about it, I was too, but I was going to talk to the DM out of game about it, and we argued about it for close to an hour. The same player did more reprehensible things because it's what my character would do, and that's not the story today. It was session 5 for me. I'd missed the session and the group hadn't met for a few due to reasons, and we'd lost a few players and I got to switch my character build around. We'd opened a door and there was a thing to fight, and we filed into the hall. It was in to fight it. There was another thing coming from behind us. We were scared because it's very likely we would go down in waves. The guy before me takes their turn and then the DM says, "And say hi to Twitch, everyone!" They send a link to their Twitch channel. It's real, we're being streamed to Twitch. Thankfully, we were only using voice and not video. I immediately clam up and only say what I need to. I run to the thing and stab it. Sneak attack, disengage, run away. As far as I'm aware, no one consented to being recorded because it was never brought up. There wasn't a session 0, not really a point of you keep losing and replacing people, I guess, and Twitch had never been mentioned even in passing. The other players sounded incredulous if they spoke afterwards, and the DM just thought it was fun. I just clammed you instead of arguing about it though. I left after that session. Very interesting. I'm not sure how I feel about this. Obviously, filming without someone's consent is a no-no. You shouldn't do that. People don't appreciate it. Some people like to be very private. But then I think it's not possible that this DM is streaming to very many people. But even then, I guess it still doesn't matter. It should ask for your consent. At least they told you though, right? I mean, I guess the DM could have just been streaming the entire time and you never would have known. But then if they didn't have any viewers and you never knew, maybe that's better? Unless, of course, maybe they had a lot of viewers and then you didn't find out unless someone recognized you, then I guess that would be probably worst case scenario, unless it came with lots of fame and fortune, but maybe you're not into that. I don't know. Obviously, I would say if you're going to be recorded, you should know about it beforehand. Not surprising. So, I feel you on this one, I guess. Our next tale is called D&D 5th Edition One-Shot Where Being Lawful Good is Not Allowed. I am what you call a forever DM. I started D&D 10 years ago, and every time I convinced one of my friends to DM, it went and or ended terribly, stories for other times. Always wanting to sit in front of the screen rather than behind it, I decided to look for another group online to just do a one-shot or 2. My character was a lawful good dragonborn paladin of Ilmater. As a servant of Ilmater, it was my job to spare my enemies, bury the dead, and help those in need. I was not permitted to do any of these things. The adventure began in a tavern, and after some story stuff, we'd subdued a spy for the enemy faction. The spy was refusing to talk, but then I spoke up. I've got the spell called Zone of Truth that, as soon as I said that, the DM and his other players all loudly dismissed the idea. The DM didn't say why I couldn't use the spell, just that he wasn't permitting it. Could have told me that before I made a paladin. The DM then instructed one of his other players to execute the spy to prevent further interrogation, magical or otherwise. Fast forward to the end of the first combat when we'd killed a bunch of lizard folk. I had specifically spent some of my starting gold on a shovel so I could bury my fallen foes. When I told the others that's what I was planning to do with the lizard folk, they stopped me once again, saying that we were in a hurry. Story-wise, we were not in any hurry. The DM could have easily said, okay, you bury them and we move on. Instead, the corpses were laid about the road, untended for no good reason. In the session's last scene, we were in a land settlement of neutral Sahwigan. They'd welcomed us in as diplomats, given us food and shelter, and offered to provide guidance to our next destination. While my character was bolstering good relations with their leader, the rest of the party was sneaking around assassinating and stealing from them. I said I didn't realize I'd be playing with a chaotic evil party, to which the DM replied, "You're not." I never played with that group again. When I didn't show up to the next scheduled game, the DM made no attempt to contact his missing player. I haven't heard from them since. He was the worst DM I ever had. Well, I guess that's kind of the luck of the draw when you decide to go online, isn't it? But it was a one-shot, so at least you weren't into it for too long. And I guess some parties don't mesh. I don't know, the DM, it's kind of weird. I feel like if you go against what the DM wanted, that's kind of on the DM for not leading you correctly and not planning to have alternate outcomes. Maybe they just like forcing something, or they have their own way of playing and they're used to it and you just weren't a good fit. At least you found out through a one-shot and that was the end of it. If you don't like it, good, move on. And unfortunately, you had to find out this way. But at least you don't have to stick through with it. And obviously, if the DM wasn't going to contact you, they're either used to people leaving or they didn't like you in the first place. Either way, it's a win-win. It's probably a situation you shouldn't continue to be in. Our final tale is called You Always Remember Your First. Not sure if this is too funny to qualify, but it wasn't all that funny at the time, so I'll just roll with it. My first campaign was basically a very loose and enthusiastic homebrew. A bunch of kids with lots of stacks of paper, imagination, and naivety. After having developed our system over a couple of months, we were ready to start our first campaign, and off we went. Can't remember exact details, but the party started throttling through a forest, heading towards a town which we all needed to get to. Safety in numbers makes a party, right? The forest opened up to vast plains, and the DM told us that we could see a group of mounted individuals on the horizon. The party had no mounts. We collectively decided to try to avoid the encounter, having a bad vibe. I'll summarize how it went from this point. Party: not sure about those guys, we'll try to avoid them. DM: they're heading straight for you, there's no way to avoid them. Party: we'll try to outrun them. DM: they're all mounted, you can't outrun them, they're definitely charging at you. Party: okay, we'll just have to stand our ground and fight. They're powerful death knight, you're all dead. Party: silence. DM: silence. Party: okay, I guess we'll all go home. DM: yep. Went from campaign start to unavoidable TPK in 20 minutes. I'm still friends with the DM, he's a corporate lawyer now. Edit: thanks for comments and questions, everyone. A lot of people ask about DM motivations. First of all, we were really young, 12 at most. My friend was a super awkward kid, and this was peak awkward. In the story, it's a funny story, no one was hurt, no emotional manipulation or anything like in some truly awful stories on this sub. Have a chuckle and be kind to one another. That is absolutely amazing. Could you imagine getting all prepared and going into a campaign and you just die in 20... It's not even meant to be a one-shot and you just die in the first 20 minutes. I feel like the DM had better things to do and forgot maybe that he had scheduled to play with you that day. He's like, I'll get out of it quickly. I'll kill everyone off and then I can go on with my night. Or maybe that's just he didn't know what to do after that. He's like, hey, well, I guess you all died. Well, that concludes our tales for today. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, please consider subscribing, liking this video, and leaving a comment below. As all those things, again, they help us grow, so thank you for that. If you'd like to hear another tale, come back and I shall tell you one. If you'd like to hear another right now, perhaps watch another video. There's a few off to the side.